Good morning, everyone. My name is Peggy Larson. I'm with WCF Insurance. And along with Dominion Energy, we are the proud sponsors of today's conference. You can't tell, but trust me that I'm smiling to see all of you. So just pretend like this is a smile on this mask. We have a very exciting day ahead of us and look forward to hearing from our panel of businesswomen on courageous conversations on inclusion and belonging. They will share their own experience and expertise about valuable leadership skills on the topic. We will be joined by moderator Sara Jones of InclusionPro and panelist Silvia Casto of the Suazo Business Center, Tracey Dean of the Utah LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce, Emma Houston of the University of Utah, and Daela Taeoalli-Higgs of SelectHealth. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our panel for today's conversation.
I think we need a personal microphone. This is going to be a new product line that people need, their own personal microphone so they can be heard through their mask. So excited to be here with you all today. We're incredibly lucky to have all of these seasoned business leaders here. And I know the conversation is about inclusion and belonging, but I want to emphasize that we don't get good at what we do around diversity and inclusion just because it's something that we work on. It's something that every leader can work on, so we'll talk a little bit about how to build those resilient skills today. But I do want to introduce our distinguished panelists here today to kick off this awesome conference today, and thank you all for braving for those joining us virtually. For those joining virtually, I know you've got a program on your seat, but we have a lot of people that are watching virtually, so I want to make sure that they know who our amazing panelists are today, and I'm just going to go in order as you see them here. Okay, so give a little wave when I introduce you. Silvia Casto is the Executive Director for the Suazo Business Center. The Suazo Business Center is a 501c3, and it's dedicated to the economic empowerment of the minority community. We want to be really clear, it's any ethnicity can be serviced by the Suazo Center, which is super, super awesome. They've actually served over 2,600 clients this year, so in small business. Casto has over 20 years of experience working with enterprises and organizations of all sizes, including government under Governor Huntsman and Mayor Biscupsi. Okay, Tracey S. Dean, who goes by the pronouns she, her, is an insurance and financial advisor by trade at Tracey Dean Financial. She is the chair of the board of directors for the Utah LGBTQ+ Chamber of Commerce and a member of the Living Color Utah group of diversity chambers. She graduated from Westminster with a BS in finance, lives with her partner Sherry, and loves to golf. Good for you, girl. Okay, Emma E. Houston, recently, big announcement, recently accepted the position with the University of Utah as a special assistant to the vice president of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, Engagement, and Program Development. So you might have known her with Salt Lake County, but she is taking on this significant role. Houston is the owner and CEO of Brighter Day Productions, LLC. She's been recognized by 30 Women to Watch, Living Color Utah, and Impact Magazine for her diversity and inclusion work. So Houston is originally from Texas. We're so glad you're here, and you've called Utah home since 1986. Woo! Okay, and Daela is the large employer sales operations manager for SelectHealth, a subsidiary of Intermountain Healthcare. She is Cook Ross certified to teach mitigating unconscious bias at Intermountain. She is a proud Samoan Tongan American, currently serving on Spy Hop Productions Board of Trustees, and she's most gratified engaging in any community efforts that lifts marginalized voices through equity, inclusion, and justice. And we spend a lot of time telling people all those words are not the same thing. So briefly, I want to introduce myself. My name is Sara Jones. I'm the CEO of InclusionPro, and I have racist thoughts, I have sexist thoughts, I have ageist thoughts, ableist thoughts, elitist thoughts, right? Isn't it nice to know that we're just all humans in this room, and we're all just here to learn and to grow and understand how to be better leaders. So thank you all for being here today. So we had an agreement amongst the four of us, the five of us actually, when we started that we are gonna actually talk about leadership skills and kind of, bypass all of the stuff that you can just Google, and let's have some real talk and talk about like maybe the harder stuff that we aren't talking about. So I want to give each of our leaders up here an opportunity to introduce themselves. And the question I would love each of them to respond to for a couple of minutes is, we just had an epic moment happen in our nation's history. Epic. First woman vice president-elect ever. I mean, women have only been able to vote for 100 years. But I really appreciated some sentiments that this is long overdue. So I'd love each of you, let's just take turns to a couple of minutes. What does this mean to you?
It was interesting because I think it took probably a day to sink in. And as it started to sink in, I started crying. It was tears of joy because finally somebody that I could show to my daughter, finally somebody that I can show to other young women, saying, look, it is possible. It is something that if you can actually work on it, you can achieve. It just made it so much more possible for so many women.
Thank you. Tracey?
I knew immediately how elated I was, Silvia, but quickly, and I share your sentiments, I echo your sentiments, but quickly I realized there was a whole other side that wasn't as excited as I was. And I had to take a step back and say, well, why? My gosh, we're all women. And then I thought, no, I get it. I see that side, and I sympathize with you, and I understand that you might not have the same feelings about this woman that I do, because my morals and values and political views are aligned. I just had to take a step back and realize that there's another side of the coin here, and honor that as well.
And I want to co-sign off of what my sisters on the stage have said in agreement, but this is a serious matter here. We have an accomplished, knowledgeable, authentic woman in the White House. She is secure and confident in who she is. She is authentic. And my thought when I saw her in the debate and she said to the vice president, I am speaking, that rang loud and clear to me as to how many times do we have to give someone the heads up that I am speaking. So her authentic self came to the table. We as women, as I have thought, we have done many things as a first. And we have opened the doors for many. We have wanted to be invited to the table. We now have a woman in the house.
I'm going to raise the roof on that one. So I was very fortunate to have been at the headquarters that Vice President-elect Kamala Harris was actually just circulating the space and practicing her debates for a week. And what I noticed on the night before the vice presidential debates up at Kingsbury Hall is when she was exiting the building, her team was there for her. Her husband, a transformative and transformational character of support to her, was right there to walk her out. She had her mask on, her kids, and she looked tired. I did not know that Mayor Pete was in the space helping her also prepare. But what I found so notable was that when we were congratulating her and saying, you got this, you've got this, she turned very quickly and she said, one day at a time, one day at a time. The next night when we were there to welcome her back to the hotel and we were congratulating her again, she said, 27 days. Now, that kind of thought leadership, that intentional strategy, the idea that even as she's probably at the top and the air is thin up there, she knows there's plenty of work to do. This is what I think about powerful women, women in leadership. These are the women that I look up to, the collaboration builders, the team sport of it all. This is the type of leadership I've been longing for and my child has been longing for. She is doing work back in DC right now to protect democracy and voter suppression, antics that are going on. And so to be with her in 2016 feeling that all was lost, to now be the mother of an adult child doing community organization work and community activism and having this pillar to look up to, because it's not the end, there'll be many more. It's an exciting time. An exciting time.
Thank you everyone for all of your thoughts. I think, it's a big moment and there's a lot of emotions around it, right? No matter where you sit on the aisle, I just want a big applause for being first. How many of you have been a first? Raise your hand if you have been a first in any way, shape, or form, right? We empathize with what that experience must be like. So big for women finally in leadership. Thank you. In the White House, thank you. Okay, let's get to some real talk now. It's been a hard year of reckoning. Daela, I'm gonna start with you. A lot of clients come to me and they say, gosh, we really have been woken up to social justice. We really want to do this. We want to be committed. We want to get engaged. And I kind of look and I say, well, most organizations are not set up to actually be social justice organizations. That's a very different thing. So what do you recommend to kind of balance a business's desire, this new renewed desire, when they now have this new renewed social consciousness that happens?
Thank you so much for the question. So I'll say for Intermountain Healthcare and SelectHealth, we have been rooted in our core values for a very long time. Every company has them. But I would say that I've been with this company as a career employee for quite some time because I can get behind the values, which are excellence, integrity, mutual respect, trust. And so to have added in 2021 equity as a new value, and to also put some meat behind it in who we're hiring, making sure that we also have a chief equity officer and that we have a team to make sure that we take care of people. We need to reflect and represent who it is that we serve as members on the SelectHealth insurance side and as patients, which is so vitally important and crucial to understand, that we need to make sure that people feel safe and that they know that who is looking out for them and taking care of them and their families looks like them. So I appreciate the question because it would not happen so easily without classes like mitigating unconscious bias, which is on company paid time. I've learned of other companies that take a reflection day to do some self-study on the course and the matter. Now, what I will say as I wrap up, I know we need to be quick, is that we are trying to understand as a company to make sure not to wheel in those who have been harmed by racist policy, who have been harmed by racist microaggressions or overt racism. We found that although the storytelling can be appealing, compelling, it does not move the needle. So I would caution everybody to be very careful when people are asked to share a story, that it's not for the gaze. It is something that has to be relived. It is a trauma that still exists. And if you're gonna find ways, the ways to do it is truly through bias discussions, implicit bias discussions, at least for us.
Thank you. Yes. Emma, will you address that? So, I guess there's been a strong message from communities of color for white people to listen and learn, and they think, well, how do I do that without knowing these stories? But, how do we thoughtfully and mindfully approach this education that we're all experiencing?
Okay, and thank you for that question. And yes, co-signing on all of this today, because we walk this path on a regular basis. When we're talking about how do you approach someone who may be from an underserved, underrepresented, marginalized community, my question to you is, first of all, have you built a relationship with that person in order to begin the conversation? My second question is this: have you done the work? Have you done the research? Have you learned about the history? Have you consulted Google? Have you consulted Wikipedia? Who have you consulted? But my question is always why? Why at this particular time? Is this just a moment that you're on the trend that we want to have this conversation? Or is this for an entire movement that you're wanting to educate yourself as well, but not cause additional damage by asking someone about their lived experiences? Our lived experiences are extremely personal. And for us to repeat and repeat and repeat and educate someone because they are now curious causes additional trauma. So my question is always, have you built a relationship? And if you have a relationship, my question to you is this: who in your five influencers come from different backgrounds, from different cultures, from different ethnicities, from different languages, from different whatever? Can you name 5 individuals in your close circle of friends that come from different demographics? And if you have those individuals in your circle, you can begin the conversation with them. You can ask them the question because you have a trusted relationship with them. To walk up to a complete stranger or a coworker that you have not built that relationship with causes additional trauma. So my suggestion is do the work, do the history, do the research, create relationships, be intentional about why you want to know, and then move forward with that.
Thank you, Emma. And I want to add, do the thinking. After that, one of the most common responses I get after we do a racial equity training is, well, thank you for sharing that, but you didn't tell me what to do. So be mindful that even that type of response can add on to the harm, can add on to, when somebody spends that emotional labor to share, that just feels like, oh, okay, was that time even worth it? So maybe just be mindful of what that response might feel like, look like take that on yourself to do that work, the post work, I guess. Tracey, we do want to make sure this conversation is very broad, and Utah happily has the 7th largest LGBT community in the nation. That surprises a lot of people, especially outside of Utah. Of course, we know that because we do the work to be supportive. But there's a lot of activation on Pride Day. What do businesses need to do to get beyond that?
Yeah, great question, Sara. And I talked to businesses in Utah and Salt Lake about that. Changing your logo to rainbow in June isn't going to suffice. And really understanding what your philosophy and intent is with diversity is the first step in understanding your own organization, because from SelectHealth to another organization, that might be and should probably be different. There's a Deloitte study in 2017 of 2,000 LGBT respondents, and 80% of them say that inclusion is something they look at in an employer, and 72% of them say that they will change employers to go with someone who is more inclusive in their hiring. And furthermore, it really matters who the leader is. So the CEO having gender neutral conversations, using pronouns, using our transgender siblings in their conversation, that stuff matters. Your managers, don't just manage them from a KPI standpoint, manage them from diversity and inclusion. Do your employees feel heard and seen, especially those from any marginalized background? There's the easy stuff, right? So, give opportunities to volunteer at Pride Day and match donations. That sort of thing can also happen. I mean, joining your local LGBT Chamber of Commerce might be a good resource to do as well. And there are 90% of Fortune 500 companies have a Pride employee resource group and other diversity employee resource groups. That's a good place to start. But if you're a smaller company, maybe starting an ally network, and we can help with that, your employees can help with that, and it just shows that you care and that you are an inclusive organization. Also, from an HR perspective and who you use for your vendors, especially from a benefit standpoint, that should be a conversation with them. HR should know how to appropriately gender someone. And if you do misgender, please educate yourself, ask, and apologize. That's all. Do better. And we'll all feel more inclusive as a whole in the organization.
Thank you. I want to based on what I've seen this year, and I'm curious if you all agree, there will be a time, I think, very quickly, where if you are a senior leader in an organization, this will be a senior level competency. You actually will not be hired if you don't have these skills and understandings and ability to manage a team. This is what I'm seeing in the work that I'm doing, right? Flowing from core values all the way down within the organization. And frankly, the ability to have high performing teams is what's really driving all of this. And I'm going to predict that really you're going to start to actually see this in job descriptions, in hiring processes as a core competency. So off my soapbox, but just watch. This is going to happen. Silvia, so I'm going to actually combine the next two questions because I didn't realize, like, I was just so beautifully in order. And I was like, wow, like that was really good planning. I didn't even realize. So I'm going to ask you a two-part question. What then do you recommend, for people who are wanting to be intentional about diversity and inclusion? What is kind of the long-term thinking to build that sustainable approach for hiring, recruiting, and retaining marginalized? I know that's a big question, but. And then what would you specifically offer in terms of helping us understand the narratives around the Latino community and what's been happening in their economy?
Well, first of all, what I want to mention is, frankly, besides it being the right thing to do in terms of doing these efforts, is frankly, and there's also an economic impact to it. As we're looking at the change in demographics, as we're looking not just who's going to become the next employees, the consumers are also changing. To not have people in your team that reflect the change in demographics really puts you behind. And whoever does get it, it does put them ahead of the curve. There's been so many studies show that the more diversity you have, the better a company does. And frankly, it's because they can tell who understands the consumer. And also because then you have different variety of experiences. One of the things I always say is we all have blind spots. I have blind spots, everybody has blind spots. But I always make sure to have next to me the people that know more about it than I do. In terms of hiring and retention, one of the toughest things is because I think there's a lot of good intentions. I think people want to do the right thing. But sometimes this is where having somebody that has done it, having that expertise can really help. One of the things I have seen time and time again is an ad goes out, and then it's sent to the exact same circle of people. If you expect to get a different group of applicants, don't keep doing the exact same thing. Enlarge your search. Think about who else can I send it to, and who else can I contact to. The other thing too, it's just the experience. Sometimes the hiring experience can be daunting for a person of color in so many ways. Personally, I go to their website. I look at the leadership. And as I look at the leadership, and no matter the gender, if it's just basically different shades of beige, I go, wait a minute. Do I belong there? And even though, I have grown up in Utah most of my life, so I think I'm used to it. But somebody from externally that comes in from another state, it's a bit shocking. It's a bit shocking because it looks so different from any other state. The other thing too is when you're interviewing that person, make sure that to get also a variety of perspective when you interview them. And the hardest thing is retention, because you can do everything right. But the moment that they come in, are they welcomed? Do they have somebody to guide them with your culture? And this is where these efforts really are long-term. Is you have to put in the work, but you can expect things to all of a sudden turn around in 6 months. And it is a long-term game. In terms of Hispanic Latinos, there are so many assumptions. And that's what's interesting because I think Latinos are so diverse. And that's, I think, what makes it a little bit more interesting because we have, as Latinos, is an ethnicity. We can have white Latinos, we can have African American Latinos, we can have Asian Latinos. Some of them, I call them undercover Latinos because you cannot tell. But also, do you know there's so many Latinos that don't even speak Spanish? One of the reasons, because of the mission that we do, is we ensure that we're bilingual. First generation usually speaks Spanish. By the time you get to second, third generation Latino, they probably has left their Spanish. We have many cities in the state where you actually see third generation Latinos. Ogden is about 1/3 Latino, and they have decades and decades of Latinos coming in. I see a lot of, also, a lot of us are college educated, and that's the other thing is, don't assume. Everybody has different backgrounds, everybody has different personalities. Frankly, one of the quickest ways to get to know anyone, and I don't care what color you are, you take them to lunch, it always starts up a great relationship. I think food is always kind of the one thing we all share in common, that we can always sit down and have a great meal. So that will be some of my suggestions. I want to be short.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And it really does surprise people that Utah, 1 in 5 people is not white. I mean, we have a actually higher ethnicity rate than people think, but does that translate all the way into leadership, right? Is 1 in 5 of your leadership not white? Something to think about. Okay, Tracey, back to you. Tell us more about the LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce and what the value you believe is sitting there. How can we be more supportive?
Sure, thank you. The Utah LGBTQ plus Chamber of Commerce is a diversity chamber. There's 51 LGBT chambers throughout the United States, and there's actually international chambers as well. But we have joined with the other diversity chambers in Utah, the Asian, Black, Pacific Islander, Hispanic, and formed Living Color Utah. And we're really a great resource for the state of Utah because, just as the panelists have said, Utah people that aren't from here look at just this homogeneous, we're all the same, and in terms of privilege and marginability, and really, take a step back. Do I want to come to that state? And so from a hiring perspective, especially in tech, and there's many of you in the audience in the tech industry, you can attest to this, we're losing out to those companies. So I think that we position ourselves as a good resource for the state and for hiring companies to, once we are propelled up, to help with that. I mean, there's large companies, Pandora there's a lot of diversity and inclusion initiatives with regards to hiring, as some of us have said today. And we missed out on a big opportunity to Atlanta because they had to hire a certain number of diverse individuals, and so they chose Atlanta over Salt Lake just from that perspective. And so it is important, and really it does create an opportunity for creativity, a better workforce. We know that if we don't all look the same or act the same or come from the same background or experiences, we are richer and better employees. And back to the chamber, but that can add to the resource that the state can have, and as well as the other diversity chambers, having that as a whole is really gives that synergy to the state and to hiring in general.
Thank you. I have just really loved to see the collaboration that's happened over the last, I would say, 3 years of these groups coming together, and really, I think the synergy is right. Like, no one loses when we collaborate, right? And it's been, I think, really shifted the narrative we've desperately needed in the state. So thank you for your work and your collaboration on that. Emma, I'm going to skip you. I'm going to save you for last. Daela, question for you. So here we are on the stage talking about diversity characteristics, right? Gender identity, sexual orientation, ethnicity, and then we get into our companies and we're educating leaders, and then there's this confusion that happens. So as an operational leader, like, how do I value somebody's characteristics, right? Because you're telling me value diversity, but how do I, you know what I mean? And there's all these I call them like, you think you're being awesome, but then you're like not awesome, and you didn't even realize it. So help us be more awesome. How do we value the diversity that people bring when we're actually in our teams?
I love this question because I think that we are, as leaders, as hiring employers, as hiring managers, always looking for kind of that skills and that performance-based something, that X factor that we all want to attract and have a part of our teams. The question is, who's just not in the room? I think Tracey or Miss Emma might have said this, or maybe even Silvia, because they're all fabulous like that, is the idea of who's missing out, who's not heard, who's not seen. And if we're not doing regular check-ins, if the relationship has not been formed, if I don't have an understanding of who it is that I'm working with shoulder to shoulder, because at some point it may not be about being shoulder to shoulder. Perhaps I'm supposed to follow at that point, because being a good leader also has that character attribute as well. So it's not an ask to deny what performance standards are or what the guidelines and the essentials of the jobs are. It's to say, how come Daela keeps on choosing Silvia for every project that is out there? Why is she the one who's continually liaison? Okay, she may have earned it, and she truly is our brand ambassador. But who am I missing out on because Tracey deserves that mentoring opportunity to go listen and learn and to be the person who carries the mantle next. So that's really, I think, the question of always to come back to. And I love that Miss Emma said this at the beginning, or maybe it was even you, Sara, is this is not just one stop. I find myself continually as an active ally who is not Black and who is not white. But unless I can see my Black brothers and sisters being lifted, everybody who's any other color that is not white in the in-between is not going to feel lifted or seen until our Black brothers and sisters are.
Yes.
And so where I land and where I can operate and where I can work is because I know as my Black brothers and my Black sisters are lifted, so can too everybody else who's been out there just hanging out in the margins or underserved.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Wow.
I want to just emphasize a leadership point that maybe often goes unrecognized, and I want to blow up this comment that you made. It's okay for someone to outshine you. It's okay for them to be better in certain skills and talents. And I think that's shifting these narratives, lifting people up, but also, Emma, do you remember the panel we were on where somebody said, I'm okay because I'm an ally if a Black person gets the job and not me? And I said, well, maybe they were more qualified than you? I don't know. Let's shift the narratives and remember that the ways that we were taught to think about allyship and diversity have changed. And it's okay to see people of color as equals, to see them in positions of privilege, right? And it's okay to talk about that and acknowledge that so that we can all shift our thinking and disrupt our assumptions around people's capabilities and what their potential is, right? Yes. Okay, Emma, need you to wrap up this awesome conversation, and then we'll give everyone an ending thought to land on. So some of us up here are business owners and entrepreneurs too, right? So this is a business conference, and I'd love for you to talk about, as an entrepreneur, what is your superpower? It may or may not relate to diversity and inclusion, but what's your entrepreneur superpower?
Oh my gosh, when I saw that question, Miss Sara, I thought, okay, what superpower do I have? I have this superpower where I have amazing girlfriends. I have people who are truth tellers to me that will call me in when I am out of step. I have surrounded myself with men who have mentored me, coached me as well, and sponsored me. But I have this core group of women who will share their skills, their talents, their knowledge, because they believe it doesn't take away anything from them to help me grow. So my superpower is girlfriends, trusted girlfriends who are truth tellers, who help me through the business that I work in, but also in my personal life, and with this new job that I have at the University of Utah as well, in this work that I do with equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging. I have actors in my life, I have allies in my life, and I have accomplices in my life. And when I say actors, there are people who will sit and see something that is going on, but because it doesn't impact them, they are actors in my life. When I have an ally, that's that sister friend or that guy friend who is going to use their position and their power and their voice to elevate me in my opportunities as well. But then those accomplices, those ride or die chicks, those accomplices have my back, stand shoulder to shoulder with me, in front of me, behind me, surrounds me. Find yourself some good sister friends who will tell you the truth and who will help elevate you and not be intimidated by the light that you shine.
Yes,
Amen.
thank you.
Got some sister friends.
Okay, If any of this conversation made you uncomfortable, it's okay. Just sit in your discomfort, think, ponder, and then think about what do I do now. These are the types of conversations I'm having every day with leaders. It is exhausting and wonderful at the same time. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I want to allow all of our great panelists to give one final thought. The theme is resilience and renew. And we've really had some deep, real talk. And so I want to ask them, how do you renew? And so we'll start with Silvia, Tracey, Emma, and then Daela.
It's interesting to talk about being uncomfortable. And I think this year, besides resilience, is we have all been incredibly uncomfortable in so many ways. But because we were uncomfortable, a lot of us have grown. A lot of us have tapped into a part of ourselves that we had no idea we could do. I mean, if you think about everything we have gone through just with 2020, frankly, we can do anything. But this is a skill that also helps you with these conversations. This is a skill that will help you also in your professional life. So in terms of renewing, a lot of it is think about sometimes when you're uncomfortable, it means that you're growing. And that's great.
Thank you.
I forgot about the renew question, but resilience, and what I've had to recognize is understanding my white privilege and listening to these ladies and others to not to speak, to just listen, and I have to understand that, and I have had those great conversations, and I am very fortunate and honored to be on this panel with all of you, that you bring so much to our state, and I again just wanted to say that, a shout out to all of you, and I love this. My biggest fan I'm a fan of Brene Brown. She had Abby Wambach on her podcast. If you don't listen, Dare to Lead is amazing. Being grateful, but demanding what you deserve is my theme for the rest of this year and furthermore. And how I renew is golf and travel. Period.
One of the things that I try to do as far as renewal with what is going on in the world today, I am spiritually grounded. For such a time as this, I know that we are created for whatever is in front of us at this particular moment. I am accountable for my words, my deeds, and my actions. I take that very seriously. I try to listen more than I talk. And my biggest go-to, believe it or not, when I need renewal, I watch the Black Panther movie. There are so many life lessons in that particular movie that I take to heart, and I try to implement that. When Queen Mother says to Prince T'Challa, tell them who you are, I have to show up every day and tell people by my words, my deeds, and my actions who I am. So my renewal is simply plugging in the movie, getting a bag of popcorn, and renewing, remembering who I am, and that people are watching my words, my deeds, and my actions. And I never know who I am going to impress in a positive way or in a negative way. I hold myself accountable.
Thank you.
For 2020, for me, I think that quietude and stillness has been something I've come back to. Life has a way of we fill it up. We fill it up for our children, we fill it up for ourselves, other people who we sacrifice our time for with an open and full heart. So this year I found myself turning a little more inward to be more reflective, making sure that I get some nature walks in where necessary. I think of right now a dear friend who some of you may know her by name, community activist and organizer, Margarita Sattini, who died fighting for COVID-19 testing out there. And I'm lifted and I'm carried by her in the work that she did, but recognizing that self-care is so incredibly important. We're just not giving it to ourselves enough. And with that said, I will close with this, because I really am trying to keep this quote close to me. Be a good ancestor. Stand for something bigger than yourself. Add value to the earth during your sojourn. So simple, but so hard to do. And I just want to be a good ancestor for the 7 generations ahead.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
We're going to end there because there's nothing more I can say. Thank you, mic drop, officially. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. They'll be here to answer any questions after or during the break. I hope that you learned something, right? Life is about continual learning, practice, making mistakes, growth, all of those wonderful things, and then also taking the time to renew. So thank you so much, everyone. And let's give all of these amazing leaders a huge round of applause.
I know.
Awesome. All of you. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here.